There are a lot of things that atheists, including myself, say all the time that we really need to stop saying.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
No. Because there's a lot of these things that, if we stop saying them, essentially hands theists a win. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. If you don't already know the Atheist Voice, well, allow me to introduce him. And he's got some things that he wants atheists to stop saying. But as I said in the intro, I think that if we stop saying them, we basically hand theists an advantage. Let's have a look.
I lost my faith. Like, that sounds like it's a bad thing. You know, you say you lose something when something bad happens. You say you lose your job. You say you lost your keys. The only time I can think of when someone says, I lost something, and you intend it as a good thing, is when you say, I lost my virginity, or I lost my weight if you were trying to exercise or something, but that's about it.
So, why can't I lost my faith be in that latter category? Yep, I worked really hard, got rid of that extra crapola that was clouding my thinking. I lost my faith. Why can't it be like that?
If you say, I lost something, we think, oh, that's too bad.
I hate having to use this on an atheist, but telling people what they think?
Depending.
But no, atheists say it all the time as a badge of honor, like, I lost my faith. Well, don't say that anymore.
Yes, sir.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. When someone suggests that faith healing works, or that Jesus came back to life, we may say something like that. That's a pretty amazing claim. You better have some amazing evidence for it.
Well, yeah.
But the truth is, it's the problem with faith healing, or anything like that, is not that there's some evidence, and just not an overwhelming amount of it. It's that there's no evidence at all.
So? All that little scrap of evidence, that tiny shred of possibility does, is get their foot in the door. It's not proof. And isn't proof what we should be after? And sometimes that little scrap of possibility, their foot in the door, makes them act like they have a knockdown, drag-out argument. It makes them act like they have proof. Take prophecy, for example. Aha, here's some real-world thing that seems to vaguely conform to some prophecy in the Bible, therefore God is real. Checkmate, atheists. Do you have any idea how many times I've heard that crapola? I'm sure most of us have. There's even some weird Muslim one about ants roaming the earth in the Quran, and hey look, there's ants, therefore Allah is real. No, if we don't push for extraordinary evidence when someone makes an extraordinary claim, we're just giving them license to keep pulling that bullshit.
Everyone is born an atheist.
Oh, merciful Zeus, not this again. All right, hit me.
Oh, I hear this all the time about babies. Like, every baby is born an atheist. And as if that counts for something. As if we ought to include them in our ranks.
Our ranks? You are aware that atheism isn't something to which you belong. It's not a group. It's not an affiliation. All we are is not theists.
Look, it's true. Technically, it's true that babies are not born believing in God or being a Christian or being a Muslim or whatever. That is accurate. But to say that they're atheists, and as if to say they're in the same category as those of us who have thought about religion and rejected religion, I think that's an insult to me, because I've actually put thought into this, and that's why I'm an atheist.
So what? Atheist is a word that describes someone's state with regard to God belief. It has nothing to do with how they got there. If you want to describe what kind of atheist you are, what kind of person who doesn't believe in a God you are, add an adjective to the beginning. Or give me another word to describe people who don't believe in any gods, regardless of how they got there. Because I'm going to be discussing it in those terms, and I need a word for it.
You should only give someone a label about this stuff if they've had a chance to think about it, and then they've come to accept that label.
Except that it's not a label. It's a description, and there's a difference.
Let's not call babies atheists as if that has any meaning or if that should count for a point on our side.
And therein lies the problem, because there are clearly two schools of thought on this issue. There are those who say that atheism is a side, a group, an affiliation, something to which you can belong, which just gives theists an excuse to say that atheism is an anti-religion religion, which I think we can agree it's not. But then there are those of us who say that atheism is nothing but not believing in any gods, that we are atheistic, and that's it. And by the way, religious people do have a tendency to try to claim children and babies as their own. How many times have we heard that we're all born sinners? But if we don't point out that babies are in fact not religiously affiliated, well, we can't show them just how wrong they are. And I think we can all agree that's kind of important.
We can be good without God. If you think about this, this is a really silly thing for us to say, because, first of all, it's a straw man argument to begin with. No one, including a lot of conservative Christians, no one's ever saying, oh yeah, all atheists are bad, immoral, awful people.
Shadinwawa? He can't possibly be serious. Have you really never heard somebody say that without God there can be no morality? Really?
When we say we can be good without God, what we mean to say is, in areas where God doesn't exist, the divorce rates are lower, the teen pregnancy rates are lower, people tend to be more educated.
Okay, once again, telling atheists what they think?
That's a peddling.
Because if I ever say you can be good without God, that is not the argument I'm addressing. At all.
I trust science, not some 2,000-year-old book. There's two problems with saying something like this. The first is it suggests that something big happened 2,000 years ago.
No, it doesn't. It suggests that people 2,000 years ago were primitive and ignorant and didn't know what they were talking about when they wrote the book.
And here's the other problem. The Bible wasn't actually written 2,000 years ago. It was written over the span of several hundred years.
Oh, big fat hairy deal. Because when people say that, it usually seems, at least, to be sarcastic, hyperbolic mockery and not an accurate historical argument. It's meant to take the wind out of the theist's sails.
So by saying it was written 2,000 years ago, we're actually granting legitimacy to a book that we intend to debunk and demystify. It completely goes against what we want to say about the Bible.
How does it do that exactly? I'm not following. Oh, and telling me what I want to do with regard to the Bible?
That's a peddling.
You can't reason someone out of something they were never reasoned into in the first place.
I have never heard somebody say that, but okay.
You hear this sort of statement a lot whenever you're trying to explain why you shouldn't argue with someone like Ken Ham. You can't argue him out of creationism. It's all he's ever known. He just believes it. You can't stop someone from just believing something.
You know, I think we might actually agree on this one. Atheists should probably stop saying that. You know, people like Ken Ham are probably too stubborn to give up their beliefs. But I think we all know atheists who used to be theists and for whom logic, reason, and evidence work to break down the walls of their faith. So, yeah, actually I agree on this one.
I don't believe in God. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't believe in the death penalty? And the response is like, well, that's great, but the death penalty still exists whether you like it or not. I think what you mean to say is, I don't think we should use the death penalty or something like that.
Oh, come on. People are using that all the time with reference to a lot of different things. As you pointed out, the death penalty or whatever. It's a common turn of phrase. You're not going to get people to stop using it.
Well, when we say, I don't believe in God, there's a lot of religious people who are thinking, who cares that you don't believe in God? God exists, so whether you choose to believe in him or not is kind of besides the point.
Except that religions demand faith of us. That's a huge part of religious doctrine, is saying that you have to believe despite the lack of proof. So belief is something that has to be addressed. Saying, I don't believe in God, and then giving your reasons is actually an important part of the argument, the discussion. It has to be said.
Furthermore, saying that I don't believe God exists, it kind of suggests that God does exist, but we're choosing to delude ourselves.
No it doesn't. It implies that someone has made a claim there's a God, and I'm not buying it. Kind of the same way I don't believe in Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster.
Religion doesn't make any sense. You know what doesn't make sense? Quantum mechanics. And you know why? Because I can tell you I haven't done the research, and even if I were to open a textbook on quantum mechanics, it would just look like gibberish to me.
Do you really think that's what's being said? That religion doesn't make any sense means that it's just gibberish? Because if I were to say that religion makes no sense, what I'm really saying is that it's not logical, that it's not internally consistent, that there's no evidence to back it up. And I wouldn't just confine myself to the soundbite of religion doesn't make any sense. I'd follow it up with what I just said about logic, reason, and evidence.
So when an atheist says something like religion doesn't make any sense, or this religious belief doesn't make any sense, that's what a lot of religious people are hearing. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking, well, you just don't understand God. You don't understand theology like we understand theology.
You see it coming, don't you? Telling religious people what they think?
Oh, you better believe that's a bad one.
You can't just pick and choose what you want to believe. I have said this so many times, I've written this so many times, and I really need to stop. Because what it suggests is that being like a cafeteria Christian, where you're only picking certain things from the buffet line, that's a bad idea. But it's not. It's actually, that's a great thing. I'm glad Christians are doing that.
How? How is that a good thing? On what planet is that a good thing? Because all it does is give religious people a chance to keep being religious without having to justify some of the crazy shit their religion says.
We can argue that they are being logically inconsistent, but that's fine. That's the better option than if they were logically consistent.
That's not fine. Because if they're allowed to be logically inconsistent about their religion, when are they going to give it up? And what else in their life are they going to be illogical about if being logically inconsistent is fine?
Furthermore, we're not really giving Christians an out here.
And we want to do that, why exactly?
Because think about this. If we say you have to 100% accept everything the Bible says, like Ken Ham, well, they can do that, but then we're going to call them crazy. Like they're the crazy creationists, and they're the ones out there who are just stuck to their book and nothing else. And then if they pick and choose what to believe, we call them cafeteria Christians. We call them people who are just picking and choosing what to believe, and then we mock them or we criticize them.
Exactly. I don't know what you're trying to do here, but I'm trying to show people that religious belief in general is chowder-headed. If you believe in the literal biblical interpretation like Ken Ham, that's kind of batty. But if you choose to be logically inconsistent by picking and choosing what you want to believe, that's not intellectually honest. So I'm hoping that by showing people both of those things, perhaps they'll realize that religious belief might not be the best idea in the world.
So basically, there's nothing a Christian can do that would suffice for us to like them or for us to not criticize them. We're not giving them an out when we criticize them for being Christians who pick and choose what to believe.
Correct. And that's a good thing. You know, this list of what atheists shouldn't say has been almost nothing but misconceptions and unwarranted incorrect assumptions, and I'm afraid I can't support it. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance, saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think.